Hi everyone, welcome to my studio. My name is Vet, and today these are the projects that we're going to be discussing. These are my dolls that are made from shoulder pads. Yes, shoulder pads. And I will show you some different techniques that I used when I was creating them. As you can see, these have been framed, but they've been embellished with beads and paint and imagination. So let's get started. I'm going to move these out of the way. Now before you frame them out, they're going to look like these. And as you can see, they're made completely of shoulder pads. Now if you wanted to create your own design not using shoulder pads, you could just cut out a half moon shape and serge your edges, because that's really important, because you don't want all your stuffing to come out like this one. Okay, this is one I attempted to make on my own, and I didn't get the regular effect that I wanted from a pre-made shoulder pads. And they come in all different colors. As you can see here, they're all different colors and they're all different shapes. They may be half moon, they may be round, okay, which makes for interesting. And because these came out of garments, and garments like dresses or blouses or even coats, sometimes they're white, sometimes they're black, because that's the standard color. But every now and then you will get a beautiful color like this one. This one came out of a blouse, and this was the actual color of the blouse. So it made my job a lot easier and kind of inspired me what I would embellish it with. And as you can see, I use a lot of scrap fabric that I had on hand. I did some hand beading. I found some individual little knickknacks that I have from my stash, and if you're an artist, you have a stash drawer, so they can be used to embellish your artwork. So I'm going to put these over to the side. Now you're starting with your basic shoulder pad shape, and you're going to wash them. Make sure you wash them thoroughly with just regular soap and water and let them dry thoroughly. When they are drying, you have to make sure that the inside as well as the outside is dry, because they have a little foam that has been pre-shaped in here. It's thick here and it's thin here. You want to make sure the entire thing is dry before you start working with them. Okay? Once you've done that, then you're going to pick a shape for the face. You can use clay, which I used here. You can use sculpted clay, you can use some kind of a polymer clay. I used a mold after I did a few of them on my own. It was much quicker to just press them into a mold and pop them out. You can get these at any local merchandise store, big box store, or craft store. Okay? And it doesn't really matter what color you use. This is some leftover model magic that I had, and I didn't want to throw it away. Because it dries really quickly, I had to do something with it. So I usually just make up a bunch of masks ahead of time for this project and other projects that I use. But again, these are lifesavers. They save a lot of time and energy. If you are using sculpted clay, of course, you have to make your design, you do your layering, and then you have to bake them in the oven. And you just follow the manufacturer instructions, okay? So you can get very creative with your faces. Let's put these to the side. Okay, so once you've made that decision, you've decided what shape you're going to use, and this is usually what they look like when they come out of a package if you're buying them, if you're not using regular garments. They're usually, like I said, they're white. You can hot glue them on, which I did here, and again, it doesn't matter what color the faces are, because you can always paint over them. You can also mold it after you pop it out of the mold. You can go back and squeeze it and do different things to reshape the face if you want to have a little more interesting look. Again, you'll use either hot glue like this, or you can use regular school glue. The hot glue and the tacky glue, they work the best for heavy objects. So you want to make sure that you have plenty of glue in the back, because this will fall off. Otherwise, if you use regular glue like this, you'll have to let it set for a longer period of time and use more glue. But either one will work, because you can also use those for your embellishments. So you decide, you kind of audition, you put the heads on there and you decide, okay, I like this one with this one, and you may switch them around, but make that decision again, obviously, before you glue them down. Once you've decided which one you want to work with, then you're going to audition your embellishments. And I think I'm going to work with this one today. Okay. Now from my stash, I have lots and lots of things to choose from. You want to have a good pair of scissors. I usually go ahead and thread some of my needles so that they're ready to go. But you can use any color that you want. I have some sequins here that I use. I'll go ahead and put some of those out because I think that's a nice contrast with that. You want to get something that is going to highlight the color of your background. If I used white, it probably wouldn't show up very well. So I want to use something that's colorful and that's a nice contrast. I have all kind of ribbon that I can use too, whether it's a scrap or it's from a bolt that you have. And again, you kind of audition it. Do I want it to go this way? Would this look good? Or maybe across the bottom? I don't know. I have one here that has tassels. Well, that's kind of interesting. Okay. And again, I'm not committed. I'm just, again, it's called auditioning. That means you just lay them out and see how it looks. I kind of like the way that goes. So what I'm going to do is use my pins, and I am going to pin that in place just to see how the overall look is going to be. And again, I can always change it later on. If I have an epiphany while I'm decorating, like, oh, maybe I should do it another way. I can maybe put it down there, but I don't know. We'll just wait and see. Okay. And I have some trim here. This is from a sample book. And maybe I'll glue that down like that. That would be kind of cool too. So again, I'm just pinning it in place. If you already know for sure that's what you want to do, then you just go ahead and glue it. Again, you want to use the tacky glue or the hot glue for any heavier objects. And I don't mean like heavy as in a rock, but heavier than the fabric that you're working with, just to make sure that it stays in place. Okay. Now once I've done that, okay, I've got my basic shapes on. You can sew this on or you can glue it on. And I think in this case I'm going to glue it on. And I already have some tacky glue that I have squeezed in here. I kind of like the way that looks. So I'm just going to lift up one side and I'm going to put a lot of thick glue. If you can see, I'm using a lot of thick glue on this. Thick. Okay. And press that down. And then we're going to add some more glue over here. And press that down. Then I'm going to add some glue here to the back so that I can just press that. Now while it's drying, you can also pin it back in place, just to kind of hold it there until it dries. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. Put some glue here and around in the back. Right over here. And press it down. You may put another pin in there just to hold it in place till it dries. And I'm not going to put it directly where the glue is, because otherwise your pen will get glued in place. But that's just to kind of temporarily hold it down till it gets a little more tacky and begins to dry. So once I've done that, then I'm going to look at what else can I put on here. So I think the sequins will work really good. So this is when you can actually use a lighter thickness of glue. Let me test my glue here. Okay. And I'm just going to put, I think I'm going to use my glue on here. This way it can be a little more directional. I'm always suspect when I'm working with these kind of squeeze bottles because it might not come out in the right consistency, and I don't want to squirt glue all over it. If I was using glitter, that would be a different story. But this way I can kind of control it. Let me lay that down right there. Let's see, where's that? When I'm working with sequins, I always use a toothpick because it's much smaller than my hands. My fingers always get in the way, and you can sprinkle them on first and then just kind of move them around, because if you use your hands, you're just going to get your fingers all sticky, which for an artist, I guess that's okay too, because we don't mind getting a little bit dirty. But if you get too much glue on your hands, what happens is it sticks to your project and you really can't get anything done because you personally are stuck. Okay, because I have a little bit of glue still on my brush. And you can use a tacky glue on this part too, or the liquid glue. It does not want to come off. There we go. Alright, okay, I'm kind of liking that, the way that's coming out. I'm going to put another one back over here that wanted to pop off. Alright, so as you can see, you can glue your embellishments on, or if you prefer, you can sew them on. But for time today, I'm just going to use glue. Put this lid back on so my tacky glue doesn't dry out. Now when I'm painting the faces, like on this one, as I said, this started out as a different color and I just painted it first with my gray background, and then I came back and embellished with a smaller, either with a smaller brush, or you can use paint pens. And I'm just using regular acrylic paint. Watercolor does not work very well. Acrylic paint works best on this. So I think what I'm going to do, I do like a little gold. So what I'm going to do is shake this. These are paint pens. You can, again, you can purchase them at any craft store. But I always test it on paper first, just to make sure I don't get a big blob. And I check them all at the same time, so that when I get ready to change colors, I don't have to stop. Okay, that one has a little more liquid coming out. And each pen is a little bit different. You shake it. And this one's even a little more watery. If your nibs get blunted like this one and you want a finer point, you just take some scissors and you can reshape it. Or you can pull the nib out and turn it upside down and push it back in. And here's some more gold, but it's a smaller nib. Got a little bit of red here. Okay. And again, I want to test it just to make sure. When I get to my project, I want to again make sure that a big blob doesn't come out, because that might not be the effect that you want. Okay, so I think I'm going to start with gold because we have some gold up here. And I'm going to do some gold embellishments here. I'll start with, again, with shapes that I know. Geometric shapes always work well. And if the paint doesn't come out very clear, again, you just press up and down. I just love these paint pens. They're so versatile. And the paint goes right where you want it. Okay, now I'm going to use a little bit of red. Test it first, make sure it's coming out. But sometimes it gets stuck. Alright. I'm just going to put some dots around it. And you can make any design that you like. And here, I'm just pressing. And it's because you're painting on fabric, the acrylic holds up really well and absorbs right into it. You also may want to test to make sure that your colors don't bleed, because depending on what kind of fabric it is, like this is some kind of a rayon blend, but this is more toward cotton. And sometimes when you will put the color down, it will start to spread out. And if you wanted that effect, that's fine, but if it's not one that you desire, because some of these are made out of silk and nylon, you want to test the back. You use your marker or your paint pen, and you can test, and you know exactly what effect you're going to get. Okay? Or if you just like a happy accident, you can go ahead and just experiment. Okay? So now I've got those down. I'm going to press even harder because I want my dot to be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to have 4 small ones and 4 big ones. This is called inking, and you shake it up, and again you test it. But the goal here is not to get it all on the paper. You just want to test to make sure that your flow is pretty consistent. Okay. And of course, put the lid back on. Alright. Now, you can use a black paint pen. In this case, I'm going to use the same brush that I used for my my glue. I'm just going to get a little bit wet, and because black covers everything, it really doesn't matter. That way I don't dirty a lot of brushes, and I can still get that fine tip, which I really like. So I'm going to put a dot in the middle. So you can see my design is coming along nicely. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and, while I have black on my brush, and you don't need very much paint. Just a little bit. And of course, if you decide, oh, you know, I really don't like that design, the good thing about acrylic, you just wait a few minutes. When it dries, and you just paint over it. Alright. Okay, I like the way that's coming out. Alright, so I'm going to rinse that. On my paper towel over here. Okay. Alright. I think I'm going to put a little bit of gold on the face. You never have too much gold. Alright. So, and I'm just kind of freestyling. I don't have any particular design in mind. It's very tribal. And maybe highlight around the eyebrows here. Some dots down there. I'm really liking that. And you're just going to experiment, because there really is no wrong way to do it, especially when it comes to art. I'm going to pull these pins out and see how that's holding. That looks pretty good. And as you can see, I am just at the beginning. When you are doing these projects, let your imagination take over, because it really doesn't matter, again, what you do, it's going to be great. So I may put maybe a couple of sequins up here. I think I'll use my toothpick, because you can paint with the toothpicks, or you can apply your embellishments with that. I'm going to put one right up here on the forehead. See how that looks, and then if I change my mind later on, again, I could just take it off. Let's put it right here on the forehead and move it around with my toothpick so you can see that effect that it's giving. I like that. I think I'll use green. And I'm going to test it. Now see, this one is very juicy, so there's a lot coming out, so I have to be really careful that it doesn't spread too much. Alright. And it absorbs right into my fabric. Over here, go right to the edge. Alright. Guess we'll go back to our dots again. Kind of like that motif. Get that nice and wet. Because this one has a lot more paint flowing, it actually spreads just a little bit, so I'm going to use a lighter touch like that. Alright, okay, back to my gold again, kind of liking that. I think I'm going to put some gold highlights on the green here. I always want to try to put the cap on the back, and it doesn't always work. Right next to the green. It just adds a little more dimension. By double lining that. Okay. Alright, so now I'm going to let that dry and think about what else I could put on there. But I notice it looks very bland and very plain down here, so I'm going to lift up the tassels and I'm going to continue with that design. This time I'll start with gold, just right on the edge. And I'm not measuring or counting. I'm just doing a little art math, and art math basically like, okay, that looks like it's about right. So I'm just going to visually determine that the spacing is even, but if you like precision, then by all means go ahead and measure. Okay, got the gold here. I'm going to go back to my green. When I'm deciding on a color scheme, I try to not bring out every color on the planet. It's better to work with a limited palette, and that's basically what I've decided. Because I'm using these particular colors, I'm just trying to stay within that color palette range. so that you have some kind of continuity. If you don't, what happens is your design gets kind of muddled and your eye is always looking for a place to land. What is your focal point? Even when you're doing sculpture, you want to have one designated color range so that your eye is not hopping, because the colors will begin to compete with one another if you add too many colors. At least for me, I could get confused very easily. So too many colors, too many things for my eyes to look at, too much eye candy. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to work on this area because this looks a little blank. And I guess I'll just continue with that pattern. Now this folds over just a little bit, so I'm going to have to hold that fabric down and put some on this side, and it just so happens that it works out. But I'm going to press here and here and get my dots going. Okay, and I think it's time to add a little bit more gold. Can't go wrong with that. And I think I'll just do some half circles. You know, the beauty of working with art too is you think you're getting away from math, but not really, because what happens is you wind up using all the geometric shapes you learned way back in kindergarten. They come back to haunt you in a good way. It just lets you know that art is in everything we do, and it makes everything better. Your basic skills that you learn, reading, writing, and arithmetic, you get to use them again, all over again when you're doing your art. So I'm going to put a few more lines on here. And I hope that you have enjoyed watching me, and now you're ready to go out and make your own dolls. So this is my little creation, and I'll probably work on a little bit more because you know artists were never finished. You just run out of time. So thank you for joining me in my studio, and I look forward to doing another project with you. So enjoy with your dolls.